We are going to begin the funeral service for Mr. Alan D. Shlau. If you have a cell phone, I'd ask you kindly to place it into silent mode or turn it completely off at this time. I'd also like to welcome anybody via live stream who is attending, and on behalf of the family, thank you. Services will be conducted by Cantor Rabbi Rob Jury of Anshe Tikva. He's going to start with the ancient tradition of cutting of the kriya, so if we could have the family please rise.
So our tradition says that even now, especially now, this is a holy time. And so we mark this moment of sadness is also holy by rending our garments. Now, once upon a time, we were told the clothes to be dressed much nicer than we used to in the old days. So we'll use this ribbon. We're going to make a blessing. It's over here.
Oh, I didn't see that.
And so we make the blessing first, Baruch, Atah, Adonai, Eloheinu, Melech Ha'olam, Dayan, Ha'emet. Blessed are you, Adonai, God, the judge of truth, and if you be so kind to lift it up.
Where did we lift that?
Sheviti Adonai linegdi tamid ki mimini bahalemot lachen samach libi v'yagel kvodi af bisari yishkol lavetoch. I have set the eternal always before me. God is at my side, and I shall not be moved. Therefore does my heart exult, for my soul rejoices, for my being is eternally secure. You will not abandon me to everlasting death, nor let your faithful ones see eternal destruction. You, O God, show me the path of life. Your presence brings fullness, enduring understanding is your eternal gift. Death has taken away our beloved Alan. Our friends grieve in their darkened world. In their silence, there is lamentation. In their tears, there is loneliness. And lost in their sorrow, may they find the presence of loving friends and family. Hear them, O God, and be with them. It was Alan's love that united us in life, which death cannot sever, his companionship shared along life's paths, which continue now through the tenderness of memory, for the gifts of his heart and his mind that brought us joy and happiness. These too are a precious remembrance. For all of these and more we thank God. In times of grief, we turn to our sacred scriptures, looking for that ever-new message of God's nearness. I invite you to join with me as we turn in our leaflets to the 23rd Psalm, seeking comfort from these ancient words. We say together, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the path of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever." From words of Psalms and seeking their comfort, the psalmist also wrote Psalm 121, "I lift up mine eyes unto the mountains. from where my help comes. My help comes from Adonai, maker of heaven and earth. God will not let your foot give way. Your protector will not slumber, for see, the protector of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. God is your guardian. God is your protection. At a seasonal change like this, we can't help but to think of Kohelet, who wrote the words, "For everything there is a season, a time for every experience under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot what is planted, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to grieve and a time to dance, a time to throw stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to discard, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time for silence and a time to speak. And so speak we do like Job, who said, Adonai natan v'Adonai lakach, Yehi Shem Adonai mevorach. The Lord has given. He gave us an amazing brother, a father, a husband, a grandfather. The Lord has taken him away. As an ancient people of faith, we gather and say, Blessed be the name of God. Together we say, Amen. We take a moment for silent prayer and personal meditation, thinking about Alan, lifting up in our minds some of our dearest memories of him. May the words of our mouths and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable unto you, our rock and our Redeemer. Together we say, Amen. We come now to words of hesped, words of eulogy, words of remembrance. And so it's my great honor to invite Marina, Alan's sister, to come forward and to share some of her memories of her brother.
I'm Marina. I'm Alan's sister, and I have known Alan all my life, his younger sister, and there's nobody here who knows Alan for such a long time. So I'm going to give some early memories of Alan as a boy, and I'll be followed by a couple of his grandsons. I'll read. By the time Alan was 2 years old, he had gained notoriety by being the boy who fell into a well. It was the first story that I remember about him, and throughout his childhood proudly repeated it with or without our sister Jackie's embellishments. It happened in front of the American school in Shanghai, where we lived. The well was covered with a wooden board, and several children were jumping over the board. And Alan missed. He jumped on the board, cracked it, and fell into the well. He grasped on the rim of the well and held on to it for a few minutes until a man, the German refugee Mr. Kuna, who later became a local hero, pulled him out. I'm a year younger than Alan, but we were always paired together. Our early life was marred by bombing raids and sporadic education. We started in the same grade in Shanghai a couple of years after the communist takeover, when most foreigners were fleeing abroad and all foreign schools were closing. So first grade was at 3 schools, the American, followed by the Jewish and the British schools. After that, for several years, we studied in a school run by the very British Miss Cubbin. The school was set up in her house. Certain subjects were taught, others omitted. And until both Alan and I entered high school in Ecuador, we did not have a consistent nor a focused education. This especially affected Alan, who had difficulty with all the cultural and language changes. Nevertheless, he overcame the handicaps with his deep involvement with animals and plants. Throughout his life, he loved all sorts of creatures. When he was 8 or 9, he began raising silkworms, which he bought at the local market. Silky caterpillars who only ate mulberry leaves, and he took care of them as they spun egg-like cocoons and later broke out of the cocoons as moths that laid eggs for the next cycle. He caught crickets and cicadas, and later on, he built a pigeon coop where he kept a slew of pigeons. Most of Alan's friends were Chinese boys, and he learned to speak Chinese better than my sister and I. When I went back to Shanghai in 1986 and visited my old Shanghai home, the neighbors came out and told us that they remembered him. He was much loved by his friends' parents, who gave him delicious treats of which I was always jealous. As a child, Alan only ate rice and green onions, despite my mother's coaxing. But then he learned how to negotiate and demanded money from my mother, which she gave to him to eat other things and to forgo the cod liver oil, which he had to take because he was so thin. That early negotiation opened the door to his entrepreneurship, which included selling various things he scavenged in the house, including some of my favorite toys. And to junkmen who bought and sold throwaways. After he took my toys, there was a big scandal, and he never did it again. We also had cats, dogs, guinea pigs, and once an owl. I'm sorry, no. After the communist takeover and my father's arrest by the authorities, China was a difficult place to live, and the Chinese began to avoid us lest they get into trouble. However, they continued to befriend Alan. He was also an avid stamp collector. The communist countries like Hungary and USSR issued beautiful stamps which were available in China, and his collection grew immensely. My nephews told me that the collection is still in his house, although stamp collecting has been replaced by other toys and has neither interested his sons or grandsons. The stamps provided Alan with knowledge of countries of the world, and he loved geography, knew the capitals, names of leaders, and locations of most countries. He loved reading world almanacs, although by the end of our stay it was difficult to obtain them. Life in China deteriorated, and around us, people were arrested, executed, committed suicide, and sent into exile. Our father was arrested, spent 15 months in prison, and accused of being an enemy of the people. The sight of our father in handcuffs deeply upset Alan for a long, long time. We were finally allowed to leave China, one of the last Jewish families to do so, in 1957. After spending a year in Hong Kong, we emigrated to Ecuador, stopping in Italy for a few months. In Ecuador, a country full of exotic plants and creatures, Alan quickly found friends in school and within the Jewish community who shared his interests, and together with them explored many parts of Ecuador, including traipsing through the Amazon jungle and climbing the many mountains that surrounded Quito. He acquired dogs, parrots, a goat named Nancy, and all kinds of reptiles. We were finally granted a visa to the United States in 1963. Our sister Jackie was living here after marrying the shaliach from Israel in Ecuador, and he had come to the University of Chicago to obtain a PhD. That's why we landed in Chicago. A condition of Alan's immigration was that he would be drafted, which was in 1965. He was stationed in Alaska. This was a great break for him and a relief for his family because his Army service took place during the Vietnam War. In Alaska, he was assigned to a weather station living in a kind of igloo in the middle of a snowy paradise. He visited often, telling us stories about Alaska and gifting us with natively made crafts. I think that during his visits back home, he met Marla. They married in 1968. He was welcomed by Marla's large family and began a happy life that lasted for 54 years. He had 2 loving and successful sons and 4 wonderful grandsons. Alan was a much beloved grandfather. He spent a lot of time with his grandchildren, took them fishing, coached baseball. They loved spending time with Marla and Alan and loved Marla's cooking. I cannot imagine the world without him. I feel so much sorrow and sadness for his family. Alan was unique, his own person, and remembered as someone good, and his friends tell me and describe him with lots of interesting stories to tell. Thank you for coming.
Beautiful memories. Thank you. It's my honor now to invite up Alan's grandchildren, Sam, Evan, Ben, and Ethan.
Hi, my name is Sam Shlau. Alan Shlau was my grandfather. I called him Papa. We are gathered here today to honor the life of Alan Shlau. Alan was always cheerful and upbeat when he was around me, and he truly put a smile on my face when I was blessed with his presence. My grandfather was one of the most influential people in my life. He constantly pushed me to be the best that I could in everything that I did. He was also very resilient. Moving from wealth in China to the middle class in Ecuador at a young age is a unique experience that must have been very difficult. Yet he persevered through and moved to the USA and began a successful life with his wife, Marla. It was extraordinary visiting my papa. We would always do fun things, like visiting the Cole Children's Museum in Glenview when I was younger. Going there and spending the day with my papa was one of my favorite parts of my childhood. I'd always run around from place to place, and he'd get his cardio in chasing after me. On other days, he would be in his backyard. He'd toss me a frisbee or maybe a football, even a baseball, and little 7-year-old me would catch it maybe half the time. On rainy days, we would sit at his kitchen table, playing whatever board game we found in upstairs, whether it was Rummy Cube or Scrabble or even just a deck of cards. Whenever we had the deck of cards, we would try to build the tallest tower of cards we could, but he would just barely lose to us to ensure that we had fun and we weren't complaining. Passover at his house was a blast too. He would hide the afikoman, and my brother, my 2 cousins Ben and Ethan, and I would be running around the house for hours and hours trying to find the piece of matzah he had tucked away somewhere. When one of us won, we would all get a few dollar coins and chocolates for our effort. Speaking of chocolate, he always had snacks for us in his house whenever we visited, whether it was peanut butter filled pretzels for my brother or some Chex Mix or other chips for me. What stands out to me now are the little things that showed us how much he truly cared about his grandchildren. When we would be in his house just chilling, watching TV, or lying then on the couch, he would come up to us with a bowl of fresh cut fruit, such as strawberries and grapes, and always make sure we were never hungry whenever we left his house. If you were to come away from today with only one thought, let it be that Alan Shlau was an admirable man who cared fiercely for the ones he loved. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Evan. Alan was my grandfather, but I called him Papa. For my entire life, he was my only grandfather, but he was all I needed, and I loved him. When I went to his house, he would always make me pancakes for me that I loved. We also loved playing chess together. My personal highlight was when I beat him, that one time. But most notably, he always went out of his way to help us. Even at the end of his life, he still came to our house to help us put up pictures and fix walls. Today, however, I want to tell everyone my favorite story about my papa. It was when we went fishing. At that point, I had never been fishing before, so he was putting on the bait and teaching me how to fish. Eventually, when he caught the fish, I was so scared to touch it because it was slimy and gross. I was just kind of cowering from it. He told me to touch it. I put the tip of my finger to the fish's skin and then quickly pulled it away. He always taught me to toughen up. Although I'm still working on it, he helped me improve a lot, and for that, I'll always be grateful. And I know he had an amazing life with many great feats and many great stories, and I am proud I was a part of his story. Thank you.
Today we mourn the loss and celebrate the life of a husband, a father, a grandfather, a papa, a brother, a friend, the life of Alan. Alan had an incredible story. Born in Shanghai, moving to Ecuador, coming to the United States, being able to take those negotiating skills he learned at home at an early age about eating and trying them out with Uncle Sam in order to get a better position in the army, to be in that place. He had incredible stories. He was set up by a matchmaking service where he met the love of his life, his Marla. And on their first date, his goal was to get a second date. And Marla said to him at the end of that, "Wow, you have a really good story. I'll take that second date." The rest, as they say, is history. 54 years of loving marriage together. It was, as we say, beshert. They were blessed with 2 sons, Michael and Jason, and lived right over by a grocery store. It was a Dominic's then, before it was Hungarian. Now it's got another name. Just where you could walk and get your groceries. Jason says he remembered that Dad loved fishing. He would take everyone fishing. He had to work on Saturdays to provide for the family, and so his weekend was sparse. So he made a little weekend time for himself. Every Saturday morning, he'd take the first part of the day, just the morning, and he'd go fishing. And you could come with him. You didn't have to go with him. And it was a beautiful, quiet time. And then he'd go to work after that in the afternoon to provide for the family. He would sometimes go to the Skokie Lagoon, but his place was at Gilson Park, and that was his regular spot with lots of dear memories there. Michael remembers, though, that Dad always put family first. He coached baseball, yes, even though he didn't like sports. He liked being with his boys. Okay, he really had zero interest in sports. And so when you'd go to the Cubs game and you were watching the game, Alan was watching the pigeons and the nature and all the things that would run around in Wrigley. Anything other than the game. His lifelong passion for animals stayed with him from those earliest stories all the way to when he brought home a puppy and Marla said no. And he had to send the puppy away, but they got other menagerie of animals coming in and out of the house. He loved seeing life. When your education is disrupted at an early age, you learn that there's more than one way to see and learn about the world. And animals provided a way for Alan to be able to show off his knowledge and connection with natural learning. It was really quite beautiful. It extended to his love to being outdoors. He would garden. And when we say garden, we mean a masterful gardener. Yes, his tomatoes, oh my goodness, his rose garden, though could have won awards here. Probably if it weren't for this beautiful garden, he might have considered moving out of the house in Glenview, but who could leave such a lifetime work of that garden? Having grown up in Shanghai, this left Alan with a passion for Chinese food. He was rather particular about his dim sum as well, and so a couple of times a year he would take the family to Chinatown, the only place you could possibly get actual dim sum, and he would run the dim sum table, making sure you got just the right thing in just the right way. For Alan, very few restaurants could measure up. He was a masterful chef, and the pain of having to pay someone to make something that tasted, well, worse than what you could have made yourself at home was tremendous. But he found a couple he liked. What he loved, though, he loved cooking for you and to see you eat the food that he made. His love language was food. And he'd bring you these beautiful masterpieces and put them down and watch and wait while you ate, asking right away, do you like it? Is it good? What do you love about it? It was a beautiful way to express love. Alan was a hard worker. He did whatever it took to provide for his family. In the earliest of days, working for Vienna Beef, and after seeing how the sausage was made, not eating so much of beef after that. But whatever job it took, he would put in the work to take care of his family. His efforts landed him in market research, working for a New York firm that had this big office in Chicago. Then the recession came in the early 90s. And at a young age, at 49, he was laid off at just the time where you're not quite sure what do you do at that moment. Well, Alan being Alan, he started his own company, his own business, and created this fantastically successful marketing research business that took the family all the way in to the world change with the internet. The change of the internet coincided with the slowdown of daily business and the birth of grandsons. Just perfect, allowing Alan to do what mattered most to him, spend even more time with family, seeing his grandkids, and staying with clients whom were fun to work with. He loved you guys so much. To see him was to see him kvel about you, to hear his stories of early life, and for him to tell stories about his grandsons. Watching you play sports, fishing with you, whether you love touching the fish or not, he loved to fish with you. He was so proud of each of you. Alan was also a people person. He would talk to anyone, everyone. If you were near him, you were in the conversation. So Jason recounted this. He goes, as a young teen, I couldn't quite appreciate that Dad could strike up a conversation anywhere, but he could because he was a people person and people loved to hear his stories and connect with him. He told amazing stories, and the bedtime stories involving Rudy the Fox are legendary. Alan was also professional at the Jewish art of friendly argument. Yeah, I see some of you have participated in friendly arguments, and he could passionately discuss any topics, even the ones you would have otherwise maybe thought you shouldn't discuss, and in it passionately yell back and forth with people and end the conversation as friends with a nosh. Even if he disagreed, that didn't mean you needed to be disagreeable. Alan was known for his stubbornness, even on that point. He was madly in love with Marla, and after her illness this past June, Alan went to go and visit her every single day, spending so much time with her, showing her love and care. We know if love were enough, things would be different today. And in our broken world, despite the love, we lost our Alan too soon. And so he now joins his parents, his sister Jacqueline, her loving husband Baruch, his sister-in-law Pamela, and his daughter-in-law Cara, in the heavenly bonds of everlasting life. Here in this world, though, he leaves behind a legacy of love. Alan leaves behind a legacy of love to his beloved wife of 54 years, his Marla. To him she is more precious than rubies and sweeter than the sweetest wine. Dad leaves behind a legacy of love to his loving sons, to Michael and to Jason and to Jason's loving wife Emily. He loved you guys so very much. Papa leaves behind a legacy of love to his grandsons, to Sam, Evan, Ben, and Ethan. He was so proud of you guys. It says in the Yiddish, children are the crown of their elders, but you guys are the jewels in Papa's crown. Alan leaves behind a legacy of love to his dear sister Marina and her loving husband Roger. You shared the bonds only siblings can truly know. Alan leaves behind a legacy of love to his brother-in-law Frank and to his loving wife Sue. He cared so much for all of you. He leaves a legacy of love to all of his nieces, nephews, many wonderful family and friends, so many of whom are with us today in this room and online. In the words of Rabbi Milton Steinberg, we say, "May God help us to understand that grief and love go hand in hand, that the pain which a loss inflicts is the measure of a love that is stronger than death. May we learn to hold on with open arms to the love he had for us and the love we have for him, so that we may bring honor to his memory. May his memory forever be a blessing." Together we say, Amen. We come now to the El Malei Rachamim, the prayer for the soul. If you're able to rise, I invite you to do so as we offer this prayer for Alan. Hail Melech Rachamim, Shochen Bamromim, המצא מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה, עם קדושים, טהורים כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים, הן הנשמת אליה בן דוד שהלך לעולמו. בעול הרחמים יסתירהו בסתר כנפיו לעולמים, ויצרו ביצרור החיים את נשמתו. אדוני הוא נחלתו, וינוח בשלום על משכבו, ונאמר Amen. Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to our beloved Alan, known in the house of Israel as Elia ben David. May he find refuge in the shadow of your wings. May his soul be bound up in the bonds of everlasting life. May he rest in peace. Together we say, Amen. Amen.
This does conclude the service at the chapel. The family will be sitting Shiva at the late residence, 4134 Miller Drive in Glenview, and then it'll be immediately following the burial today until 4, and then Saturday beginning at 4:30. And that information is on your folders as well as on our website. Interment will take place at Shalom Memorial Park, 1700 West Rand Road in Arlington Heights. The procession will be forming in the parking lot. Please keep in mind a few safety features while in the procession. Keep your bright headlights on at all times. Put your emergency blinkers on. Attach the orange funeral sticker to the passenger portion of the front windshield. And we'll also attach a flag to the roof of your car. And please stay as close as safety permits to the car in front of you. The following family members have been asked to serve as pallbearers: Roger Cunningham, Frank Woolman, Samuel Shlau, Evan Shlau, Benjamin Shlau, and Ethan Shlau. At this time, I would ask that everyone please rise as the family, the rabbi, are escorted from the chapel. Pallbearers, we're going to ask you to step forward and step right behind this gentleman. 2 by 2. The family come this way. This does conclude the service. Thank you.